Welcome, everyone, to today's Scaling with People podcast. I'm Guinevere Query, your host and founder and CEO to Guide to HR. So, do you want to learn how to operate in faster cycles and grow your business, scale it through people and marketing? Then stay tuned because I have Vanessa Sierra on the call today, and she's going to help us learn a little bit more about this. So, Vanessa, welcome and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. I have been in the B2B SaaS space for the last 15 years. I have been mainly tasked with the commercialization of tech products. And the bulk of my experience has been in launching or scaling health tech products. I dabbled for a few years in fintech and also cybersecurity. So I've been working with founders, just kind of getting them ramped up and helping them scale their efforts.
That's awesome. So, as you're helping them scale their efforts and ramp up, what are some of the key trends you're seeing with your clients, especially now we have AI introduced into all the different facets of the working space?
Yeah. I think it's been exciting, maybe a little frustrating too. As a marketer, we have lots of mixed feelings around AI. But marketing is where a lot of these, if you're working on a great product, if you are figuring out that you have the right, technology or the right talent at the table, whether it's HR, product, finance, all the different layers of your company, marketing is where it all comes together to then be pushed out into the market and be sort of that external facing, arm of your business. And so as frustrating as a marketer as it can be when you see AI and you hear, you see headlines of people getting laid off or content creators just getting replaced by, Chat GPT, like they can write all the blogs, it'll be great. It has in some ways been a little bit of the shakeup and the wake up that we all needed to raise the bar a little bit on how can we be more productive at a lower cost, and how can we also lean into the more strategic side of our roles to create, great results with way less. So
Yeah.
I think that's what's been really key, is just how to leverage it for those reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how does one get to operating in a faster cycle? I know CEOs and founders out there who are just like, do more with less, do it faster. It's not scaling the business at all costs anymore. So, what are some of the things that you're seeing that our audience could take away and implement right away or think about as they get closer to that phase of their business?
I would say, number one, it's how you think about, like, what does fast mean to you in relation to your goal? So I'll give you an example in the marketing world. I could be a founder that came up with a product that maybe is 80% baked. And then the last 20%, I'm still kind of fine tuning and figuring out what functionalities really resonate with my audience, and just how to put something out there that's just like A plus material. In the process, I might engage with someone to say, hey, I want to go and get some leads and get people on my platform. So my goal might be to unlock that silver bullet, that perfect messaging that's going to make everyone get on my platform and like generate all the leads that I need. Operating in faster cycles in order to accomplish that, has to be very clearly defined, right? So like if you are just going to take a sloppy approach to figuring out that messaging, and that's your operating in faster cycles, that might feel like a failure, right? Like it might be like, I'm not going fast enough. This isn't happening quickly enough. But if you've really set out to figure out, unlock your messaging, if it took 3 months versus taking 3 weeks, that might be as fast as you need it to go, right?
Yeah.
So number
Yeah.
one is mindset and like really putting it in the context of what you're trying to accomplish and, what's doable.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, as the statement says, sometimes you need to go slow to go faster. And that's a great
Exactly.
example of what you just said. You might actually end up at your end result, the desired end result, faster if you take those 3 months versus doing it sloppy, as you said, in 3 weeks. Then you go out, it's not hitting it right. You have to clean it up, you have to revise. That's another 3 weeks plus the time frame you were letting the market figure out if it was working, and you rinse and repeat, and all of a sudden now you're in 9 months, 12 months instead of taking the 3 months to go out to the market the right way.
Exactly, exactly. So I think that's definitely, really important in just setting yourself up for success. The second piece, and I think you would probably, I think you might have a similar view on this, is getting the right experience and the right talent at the table,
Yeah. At the right time, too.
the right time. I think, yes,
Hmm.
that's so important. And the reason for that is, and this kind of ties back to the AI conversation that we were having. Um, AI is great, but it's almost like saying I can drive the car faster. I can, maybe drive the car more efficiently with less gas. But if I don't know where I'm going, if I don't have that vision or like, hey, I've done this drive before,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter how fast I go or like how quickly I can crank out a blog because there's no vision, there's no strategy, right? And so if you are a founder, early stage startup, get the right talent at the table that can then leverage the other resources to maximize that output, to maximize your productivity. I think that's also key in operating in faster cycles.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah. And
that's right.
yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And there's this like the reason why I added at the right time is I have seen so many CEOs who trigger a higher, more experienced, yes, more costly. They figure they can't afford it, or this is the time they're going to have to pay for that to bring that executive level person in or higher level person in. But is it the right time for the business to accept that? I've seen it so many times where the first chief level hire they weren't quite ready for it. And it was because a lot of chief level individuals are going to want to focus on the strategy, which is important. Like you said, where are we going with the business? But a lot of smaller businesses, startup businesses, when you're younger in your life cycle, you still need that roll up your sleeves VP level mentality who is going to come in and get it cleaned up and put right processes in place, put the right function, be tactical while also creating a roadmap or a strategy plan of where we're trying to go and understanding what the business is doing so that then you can go out and get your chief level people at a different point in time. And so that would be my one warning sign to founders out there that we're not necessarily saying go out and hire a chief level person overnight, right? It's the right levels, the right experience, doing the right things at the right time for your business. If I say
Exactly.
right one more time, maybe someone will win a prize. I
Well, I think it's the right idea.
don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. And I would say to add to that, just as a third layer to all of this in terms of operating in faster cycles, and I actually had this conversation with a couple founders a few weeks ago in these forums that I do. Set your goals and stop deviating from the plan. And I think the goal setting process, it's an art and a science. It is having the right data in front of you. It's going with your gut. It's understanding where your company really is at, your own strengths and weaknesses. Um, and then set your goal. I have sat down with founders that have said, hey, in the next 2 months, I want to land one enterprise client and 5 small businesses, like from this target list that we've created. We will go ahead and give that a shot, right? But but is that realistic with the resources you have? Is a better goal to say we want to grow, our revenue by 25% in the next 2 quarters, off of like a specific segment that we're going after. And I think if you can really put some thought into those three pieces, um, then you will be in a good place set up for success to actually operate in faster cycles.
Yeah, and so many times what I see is you have the board goal, right? And then you have what you're telling like everyone else or what you're telling your leadership goal. And then you have like shoot for the moon goal that you tell everyone. So like, hey, board, we're going to give you 25 million by the end of the year. Leaders, we need 35 million by the end of the year. Employees, we need 40 million by the end of the year, right? And then that way is like, you're really stretching them people, but at the same time it's kind of okay, quote unquote, for those not watching or listening, quote unquote, okay to miss that mark because you've told the board you're at a lower rate. So
Yeah.
being able to make the board for sure, that's important. And investors, right, and all that good stuff. But then pushing your leaders to push pushing your employees to push even further is what I see a repeat theme in.
I agree. And I think that's where it's important to get specific, right? Because
Yeah.
if there's an intersection of your goal setting with your strategy. And you were just, I think before we kind of kicked off, we were talking about like the strategy, the business one, the one that, you're maybe talking about at your senior leadership level,
Yep.
and then the strategy to execute something as you were, kind of describing. Well, if you can come to me, if I'm part of a company and, there's a strategy that's already in motion that's been decided, and the goal setting is like, yeah, we are going to target these enterprise clients within this segment and we're going to win 25% of those. Like, give me details as best as you can to really be able to like execute on this vision, and that will also feel faster, right? Because now
Yeah.
you just removed all the noise of like, I could have gone in every direction, grow 25%. I'll throw a whole bunch of accounts in there and like check the box, right?
Yeah.
But then that feels slower because on the other side of all that effort, you're like, but those weren't the right accounts. That wasn't the thing we wanted to do. Obviously, I'm kind of leaning into the marketing side of that conversation, but I think it applies to the whole company, right? Getting
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Being and it's interesting, there's a fine line between being detailed and being prescriptive. And I think that you got to, as a founder, you really have, and leader, you have to walk that fine line really well to be able to give your employees and your managers and other leaders the space to be creative and to own and empower them to execute on it without telling them that, okay, here's every single step that you have to take. It's yes, I want the enterprise clients and I want it to be in this industry and I want it to be these size and I need it to be X, Y, and Z. But then how they go about it or where they're going and executing on that, like let them empower them, give them and there's studies that show that employees that understand the overarching business goal and how it ties back into
Yeah.
their own role. I think it's really important, their department and then their own role,
Yeah.
they actually will feel more empowered to make decisions on the fly for the business that are going to actually impact the business goals the way that the founder, the leaders want. So it's really important, but don't be prescriptive. That's where you're going to start killing your culture and your engagement, and people are going to start fleeing for another opportunity for sure.
I mean, if I had a nickel for every time. But I think you're spot on to something. And it kind of my brain went to kind of jump to another piece of this that's really important. You're right. You end up hiring really great talent and you've given them a goal or you've painted the picture of what you're trying to accomplish, and now they're going to help you get there.
Yep.
It's so important to get out of the way. A lot of times you're hiring people that have done this many times. That's why you hired them, because you
Hire
trust.
smarter than you and
Hire
get out
smarter
of
than
their way.
you. They're exactly. And so I think that's also an important reminder, mostly at early stage, where you have, founders where it's like they're very passionate. This is something that they've really put a lot of effort into to make it right, to make it good. And it comes from their own industry experience. And it's something that they've been living and breathing for so long that all of a sudden I have to hand over the keys to the car. And I'm just like, I'm not sure if you're going to scratch it. Like there's just so much there. So I think that piece of like get yourself to a good place in terms of goal setting, get yourself to a good place in terms of who you hired for the job and your trust and their experience. And then, yeah, definitely being able to set yourself up to get out of the way. Um, but the other piece that I feel like really relates to some of the conversations and the pieces that you work on potentially is also the training, like the knowledge scaling, right? Like helping others understand, have enough information about the industry, the product, and the players that they can make those decisions. And in highly regulated industries like healthcare or in finance or cybersecurity, that can be a really deep, deep, dark tunnel of information that people have to get smart on very quickly to make the right decisions for you. So there's a training component and like
Yeah.
knowledge sharing component to this that also really
Well,
helps.
especially when you layer on AI, going back to adding that into the conversation, I've seen like when companies implement a tool, maybe a more general, like whether it's a Google tool or a Microsoft tool or something else where it's for the whole company. And then you kind of sit back and you watch the analytics of like, what are the questions? How are they using the tool? Who's using it more than others? And it's interesting to see everybody needs to be upscaled because you have people who baseline like what should I cook for dinner tonight if I have these five ingredients? And then it's like they don't know that they can then say, what is the recipe that I should use for this ingredient? I'm being really simplistic here, right? But there is more functionality. And if we don't continue to upscale our employees, no matter what we're talking about, but AI is just an easy one. That's an easy target for me right now, right? Like we have to do that in order to make sure that we're getting the most out of our employees. And then also too, by doing that, you're then engaging them in a way where you're showing you're giving them value back, right? Employees are obviously a value add to the business. If they're not, then maybe you need to help them move on. But most of them are, and most of them are trying to be. So
Yeah.
we also, as employers and companies, we need to be doing the same. And the best way to do it is to help them with their professional growth. And that's just something really upskilling, helping them understand how to use a tool like that. Or maybe it's a project that they need to work on. It's actual work that they're doing for you, but they're learning and growing through that experience.
Yeah. And I think we see that a lot. I mean, their growth is your growth.
Oh yeah.
And on that sort of topic, on that thread of growth, I think a lot of what, I think there's a relationship between a company's ability to, and again, I'm being biased from my view of the house here, but it's scaling revenue is directly related to your ability to scale your people and vice
Yeah.
versa. And so the earlier that a founder can really dial into that and understand that and get, as much knowledge transfer from people that have done it before, just really understand what that can look like for their own small operation as it starts to grow. The sooner you can incorporate that, the better prepared you will be for inevitably that moment where you take off or where you have those pivotal changes that allow you to grow just a little bit more. You're hopefully setting yourself up with a good foundation to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So curious, if you could get in front of founders earlier on in
Yes.
their life cycles, what would be one of the things that you would just wish every founder could know and be able to impact their business immediately before, like, you're able to even talk to them? It's like, oh man, if I could just tell them this one thing, or if I could have them recognize this one thing, what would that look like, or what would that be?
Yeah. Um, just one. Okay. So
Okay, or two or three.
no,
We
I
got a
love
few
this. I
more
love
minutes.
this. If I had to narrow it down, and again, just there's just a world of things that have to come together for a founder to really be successful.
Yeah.
Um, I would say it's really understanding the reality of like when you're out there hiring amazing talent to join your company, um, how can you inform yourself and become comfortable with the handing over of the keys to the car, so to speak? Um, and that sometimes might require talking to founders that have done this a few times, have been successful at it, and are just very aware of what that feels like. To have really talented people at the table that are now going to take over slowly but surely, earning their way and helping you then scale and build these things out in a thoughtful way. Because I think it's really easy. I think the topic of trust, when you have something that you're so passionate about, and I'm kind of speaking to the founders specifically here, like you're so passionate about this thing that you put together and it's really good and you've done a great job and you've gotten really far and maybe you've raised a lot of money for it and you are essential to all of this existing.
Yeah.
That shift that needs to happen when you bring in others to the table, um, just having that self-awareness of knowing when you still haven't let go or when you didn't set the right goals and therefore don't trust that the people are going after what you want or helping you execute on that vision. uh, that can really go a long way. Becoming self-aware, arming yourself with founders that have done it before and understand what the mental, I don't know, physical, athletic requirements to shift into that. is probably a huge game changer for first-time founders or early stage founders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that actually kind of is great advice for all executives, all leaders. It's really what I hear you saying is having a group of mentors or a group of individuals who have been there and done that, that you can lean on and learn from. It's the same thing as having a couple of mentors or one mentor even, where you can go and say, hey, here's what I'm dealing with. Here's how I think I should operate. What have you seen in your experience, and learning from each other. And that's one of the reasons why I love also bringing founders onto this show is I love to learn from them, and hopefully the listeners are learning from each other from that perspective. But I think that is such a key thing. It's, they say history repeats itself. It's because we're not learning from each other. So if we can learn from each other and be like, oh, I remember Vanessa telling me this. This is a minefield I can avoid because she actually did it and it blew up in front of her face. And I'm going to
Yeah.
learn from that so it doesn't happen to me. Doesn't mean
Oh,
I won't step on a different minefield, but at least I'm not going to step on that one.
absolutely. And I think we cannot highlight enough that while founders sometimes are doing this for the first time, or maybe you are a founder, you've done this several times, but it's a new product or a different industry that you're stepping into, whatever that might be. When you're hiring people into these roles, specifically in your leadership team, I have 16 years of mistakes and growth, right? Like I have 16 years of both messing things up and 16 years of creating millions in pipeline opportunities for companies. It's possible that, I've seen versions of this before and might have some good advice. Possible that it doesn't apply, but opening up that conversation and creating that transparency and like the openness to filling in those gaps where it's needed is, again, I feel like it could be a game changer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even when you think about it, it's like, okay, the business world, the world itself, where we are today, where we were versus 10 years ago, and we're talking pre-COVID, right? That's a different world. If you step back and go, well, pre 9/11, right? Pre this, pre that, then like obviously there are things that change, but one thing that's constant is the human interaction and the human element that is a part of our business world and the consumers, whether you're B2B or B2C, you're still targeting people. There's still relationships and there's still interaction and engagement and the knowledge of those individuals. So there's at least one little thread of consistency that you can pull from other people's experiences.
It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up to this podcast today, is there any last minute words of wisdom or tools or tricks, advice you'd like to give the audience?
Yeah, I would say specifically in relation to AI, I want to underline something that we touched on throughout our conversation, which is just, you can drive the faster car, you can use less fuel to get to your destination, but in the end, you are going to need that person. You are going to need some level of strategy and like cohesion to what you're doing. And buyer beware when it comes to AI. It's so great that you're doing things more efficiently. It's so great that it's so smart. It already has so many answers for you. But there is a possibility that by automating so many elements to how we show up as a brand or how we show up as a company, communications within the company, I mean, you name it, the ways that AI can impact every department in a company, there is also the risk of being completely fragmented and essentially diluting your impact because you don't have that full cohesion of your marketing strategy, of how you're treating employees, the employee experience, you name it. And
Yeah.
so that would be my one parting thought is don't forget, you're going to need some really good either experience or strategy at the table to help you pull all of this amazing, power that you have with AI into your sphere and helping you create exponential results with very little investment in resources and make sure that you're tapping into that.
Yeah. And so in your car analogy, I can't help but like just, I don't know, sickly imagine. We know AI hallucinates.
Yes.
So you don't want to be in the car where the AI is hallucinating there's a bridge, but there's not, right? You don't want to go off the
Yes.
cliff. literally that just came in my mind as you're talking about it. I'm like, well, I don't want a hallucinating bridge where I'm going to drive onto it and it's not there. So it is really important that you are making sure that you are using AI in an effective way. And I've talked about this on past podcasts recently of also double checking and validating and reassessing your tools, because I think as AI is becoming more and more, you have departments and even sub departments who are going out and test trying tools that maybe then ultimately they decide to pick it out for the year. But then, you have layers of AI tools all over the place and none of them are connecting. And like you said, it's just so disparate and not connecting and not aligned to your vision. So that's another piece of the puzzle too, is as you start to look at bringing on tools, that you don't end up having 100 AI tools when like 3 or 4 would probably, meet 80% of those 100 tools that you have.
I think that's spot on. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, thanks, Vanessa, for your time. And thanks, everyone, for listening today. We hope you got some good words of wisdom and some actionable items out of it. And we will see you on the next podcast.